Let's start with the trade war. We have seen, as my colleague Matt Miller was saying, the two sides, it seems, the US and China, getting closer to the phase one part of the deal, may even be signed in the US. What would that mean in terms of, in practice, the material impact for European companies if we do get that trade deal pocketed away come mid-November, end of November? Does it have a material impact on your businesses?
I think so. Really, it will be a great news, it will be positive, as uncertainties are negative. And today the global GDP growth is suffering by a number of uncertainties about Brexit, about the tariff, about this dispute between USA and China. So less uncertainties and more relax for the business to flow and the GDP to grow faster in the interest of all countries.
Would it be enough, do you think, to allow Italian companies to start spending again on capex? Would a phase one deal be enough, or do you need to see a comprehensive deal?
Italian export is, first of all, continuing to grow, and this is an important sign for our economy. In the first 10 months of the year, 8 months of the year, through August, it grew by 2.6%. This is a positive, but if I look at the trend by sector, there are areas, automotive for instance, where growth has been significantly impaired by the overall global market and global industry. And I believe that capex will be significantly driven by growth perspective, sector by sector, industry by industry.
Walk us through some of the deals you expect to be signing here in China and their impact.
The Italian Trade Agency is very active nowadays in order to help Italian companies not only to be more present in China, but also to leverage on the new and most modern marketing channels about the e-commerce, about this model of the offline to online commerce, whereby you enter the shop with a smartphone and you exit without bags, and the shop will deliver at home. And we are signing today two important deals in this direction. We will sign an agreement with Jidong to enter in about 200 brands of made in Italy into the marketplace.
That's Jingdong, that's the e-commerce platform.
Correct, on the e-commerce platform, and the other one with Hema Alibaba on the O2O platform.
What is the value of those deals?
We will bring in about other 500 new brands between the two agreements into China.
Now, rather controversially, some would argue, Italy signed up to the Belt and Road Initiative. Has that push to strengthen ties with China, has that started to pay off? Has it opened up other doors for Italian firms here?
It's creating momentum, it's creating a large interest, is triggering a more active approach and proactive approach by Italian companies towards China. And clearly we signed in last March, so we started quite recently. We are now at the end nurturing those opportunities. Will take certainly a few more months in order to see the first sign on the Italian export.
Now, your former role as chairman of ST Micro, the chip maker, the French-Italian chip maker, does that give you a sense of what the European Commission should be doing in terms of some of these security concerns that have particularly been raised in Washington? Is there more that Europe should be doing to protect some of its core technology from China, and also potentially restrict some of its core technology flowing to some of these Chinese companies that are involved in things like surveillance?
Technology are becoming more and more global, and technology flowing across the world is in principle a positive, to the extent they do respect two very important principles. Principle number one is the respect of the intellectual properties wherever, and the second one is the respect of any privacy or communication or defense interest of any single country.
But in terms of the concerns, particularly around companies like Huawei, does Italy need to be paying more attention to what Washington is saying about some of those security risks? How do you balance that relationship? You want a strong economic partnership with China, but you also, of course, have to assuage those concerns in Washington about security.
There is a high sensitivity, and there's been a high sensitivity in Italy in respect to the security of communication. And believe me, when you look at the network of infrastructure in Europe built by these infrastructure suppliers, this is not Italy among the first countries having started with them.
Okay, let me ask you about the European Union and the US when it comes to trade. We heard from Wilbur Ross, the Commerce Secretary, saying that maybe the US doesn't need to impose tariffs on European autos. Do you think they're getting closer, Brussels and Washington, to some kind of agreement on this issue?
It's a quite unfortunate circumstance also due to some lack of synchronization in timing. At the end, the WTO ruled in favor of the USA on the Airbus case, a case that started 14 years ago. And there is in parallel a similar case in respect to alleged subsidies by the US government in favor of Boeing. And perhaps the two cases, once finally ruled also about the Boeing case, can offset each other. And this is their hope. Meanwhile, this tariff clearly brings some negative effect to the European industry. Likely the Italian industry has been affected a little bit less than expected, as you know, Italy is not one of the producers of Airbus. So out of the overall bill for Europe, Italy will pay only in about 2%. However, as the Italian trade agency, we put together a set of support to export more and to export more in countries also different than the USA for those companies, those products that are affected by the American tariff nowadays.